Welcome, sleepy soul. I'm your storyteller tonight, here to help you drift into deep, peaceful sleep. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more bedtime stories. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. And if there's a story you'd like to hear next, I'd love to know that, too. I should have gone straight home after work. That thought replayed in my head long after it was too late to change anything. Fridays at Costco were hell on earth. I don't care what anyone says. Working the night shift in a giant warehouse with thousands of customers during the day and a skeleton crew at night will chew you up. It was pushing 11 p.m. By the time we finally closed and chewed out the last stragglers, my feet itched so bad I could barely feel them, and my lower back felt like someone had driven nails into it. Still, after all that chaos, the silence was worse. The thought of going back to my empty apartment, reheating leftovers, and staring at the wall didn't appeal to me at all. So when Kara leaned against the register and said, "Hey, Jess and I are hitting Waffle Stop. You in?" I didn't even think twice. "Man, I don't know," I said, dragging my hands over my face. "I'm beat. Come on." Kara grinned, tossing her braid over her shoulder. "We survived inventory week without killing anyone. That deserves pancakes." Jess chimed in from the other side, smirking as she counted down her till and coffee, buckets of it. I hesitated. My body screamed for rest, but the truth was I needed to decompress, and these two were good company, so I gave in. All right, I said, but I'm not driving. My knee's killing me." "What happened?" Kara asked. "Training," I muttered. "Tweaked it during sparring. Now I walk like someone's grandpa." "Sexy," Jess teased. "Come limp into Waffle Stop with us. People will think you're mysterious." "Yeah." Mysterious like a guy who needs a hip replacement. They laughed, and just like that the mood lifted. We locked up, said goodnight to the overnight stock team, and stepped out into the thick Texas heat. Even at night, the air felt heavy enough to choke you. The concrete radiated the day's heat, and the sky glowed with that dull orange haze from all the street lights and gas stations nearby. We split off toward our cars. Mine was parked near the far end, which gave me a perfect view of how empty the lot was. I didn't like that. There's something about a big parking lot at night. Too many shadows, too many blind spots. I shook it off and climbed in, following Carrera and Jess out toward the Waffle Stop by the highway. The bell over the door jingled when we walked in, and instantly, the smell of bacon grease and burnt coffee hit me. The place was nearly empty, except for a trucker hunched over a plate and two older ladies in the corner. The waitress, tired but friendly, gave us a smile and waved us to a booth near the center. I slid in, facing the door. Habit. Always face the exits. Kara and Jess sat across from me, already joking about which one of us would regret this meal. Tomorrow, I half listened, scanning the room. Everything seemed fine. For now, our waitress, name tag reading Diane, came over with menus. "What can I get y'all to drink?" "Coffee," Jess said immediately. "Sweet tea for me," Kara added. "Just water," I said, rubbing my knee under the table. It throbbed like hell from earlier. We ordered, and for a moment it felt normal, comfortable. The hum of the overhead lights, the faint sizzle from the griddle behind the counter, the soft clink of dishes. Then the door chimed again. Two men walked in. They didn't look right. Both wore heavy hoodies, dark gray and black, pulled low over their faces, in Texas in the middle of summer. Their movements were jerky, restless. One was tall and lanky, the other shorter, broader, with tattoos crawling up his neck. Their eyes glassy, darting, like they hadn't slept in days. I've seen a lot of shady people working retail late at night, but something about these two sent alarms blaring in my head. They walked past us slow, too slow, their heads turning just enough to look at Carrera and Jess. My gut clenched. They slid into a booth behind me. close enough that I could hear the vinyl creak under their weight, but not close enough for me to see without turning around. I hated that. No reflection, no line of sight. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Don't look now, but we've got company. Kara blinked. What do you mean? Two guys, hoodies, came in after us. They're behind me. Jess frowned. So, it's a diner. People eat? Yeah, I said quietly. Except they're not eating. Diane came back with drinks, oblivious to the tension creeping up my spine. The girls kept chatting, but I wasn't hearing them. Every sense was tuned to the booth behind me, the sound of ice clinking in a glass, a slow, wet sniff, a faint tap, tap, tap of fingers on the table. I risked a glance when Diane went by. Two empty water glasses, no menus in their hands, just staring. The tall one drummed his fingers against the table, eyes locked on Carrara. The other leaned back, grinning like he knew something I didn't. My stomach went cold. I kept my voice even when I spoke. Finish quick. We're leaving soon. Jess rolled her eyes. Paranoid much. Humor me. We wrapped up fast. I threw down cash and told Diane to keep the change. As I stood, my knee screamed in protest. The limp was obvious now, no matter how I tried to hide it. That's when I saw it. The shorter guy pointed at me slowly, then made a stabbing motion with his hand. The tall one grinned wider. My pulse spiked so hard I felt it in my throat. Let's go, I said, my voice like gravel. We pushed out into the parking lot. The air hit me like a wall, thick and heavy, but it wasn't the heat making me sweat. Jess, get to your car, I said, tossing my keys to Kara. Start mine, lock the doors. What now? Something in my tone must have registered because they moved fast. Behind me, the door banged open, footsteps quick. I turned and there they were, hoodies up, faces twisted into something animal. One reached into his pocket, the other licked his lips. I planted my feet, every muscle screaming. Hey, I barked, backed off. For a second they froze. Then the tall one pulled something from his pocket, metal glinting under the streetlight. A knife. That was all I needed to see. I spun, dove into the car as Kara yanked the door open. Go, go, go. I roared, the engine roared, tires screeched. In the mirror, I saw them sprinting after us. One shouting something I couldn't hear over the pounding of my heart. We didn't stop. Not until we were back on the highway, headlights carving a path through the dark. My hand shook so bad I could barely text Jess. You okay, Jess? Yeah. WTF just happened. I stared at the screen, heart still jackhammering. The truth was simple. If I hadn't paid attention, if I'd ignored that gut feeling, we'd be dead. And that thought still keeps me up at night. I never thought a quick stop for groceries would turn into the scariest night of my life. To set the scene, I was 25 years old at the time, living in a mid-sized city in North Carolina. My boyfriend Chris and I had just come from a small gathering at a friend's apartment. Nothing wild, just a few of us watching movies, snacking, and catching up. It was close to 2:00 a.m. when we left. Neither of us had been drinking much. Chris had a couple of beers earlier and I didn't drink at all. Back then, I wasn't much of a drinker. I had my own struggles. Honestly, I was battling an opioid addiction at the time, and though I was in a rough place, I was trying to keep some semblance of control. That part doesn't really matter for this story, except to explain why I was the designated driver. As we were driving home, Chris leaned back in the passenger seat and muttered, "God, I'm starving." Me too, I admitted. We hadn't eaten much at the gathering, and now the hunger pangs were hitting hard. Most places were closed that late, but we remembered that the Costco in town had this odd 24-hour self-checkout section attached to the warehouse. It was meant for night shift workers and emergency supply runs. It was kind of a weird setup. Only one security guard on duty, and the main warehouse lights dimmed but still technically open. Costco run at 2 a.m. Chris asked with a grin, why not? I need some coffee pods anyway, I said, trying to make it sound like a practical decision, even though all I wanted was something to eat. We headed toward the warehouse. The streets were quiet, eerily so. I remember feeling like the whole city was asleep except for us. When we pulled into the Costco lot, it was almost empty, save for a few scattered cars and a big semi parked off to the side. The lot lights cast harsh white circles on the asphalt, leaving strange shadows between them. Inside, the store was even creepier than the parking lot. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, reflecting off endless rows of products stacked to the ceiling. The massive space felt hollow at that hour, like a cathedral of consumerism with no congregation. A sleepy-looking security guard sat on a stool near the entrance, scrolling on his phone. Chris muttered, "Feels like a horror movie set." "In here, don't start," I said with a nervous laugh, trying to shake the feeling that something about the atmosphere was off. We grabbed a cart and wandered toward the refrigerated section. That's when I noticed them, the first time anyway. A young man, maybe late 20s, stood at the end of the aisle, pacing back and forth with his hands clenched. His movements were jittery, sharp, like a puppet being yanked by invisible strings. He kept mumbling under his breath, his jaw grinding so hard I could see the muscles flexing in his face from 20 feet away. I froze for a second, cart halfway down the aisle. Chris noticed my hesitation. "What?" "Nothing," I whispered, forcing myself to move forward. "People act weird all the time in 24-hour stores," I told myself. Probably a guy tweaking, but harmless. Still, I kept him in my peripheral vision. That's when I noticed her, a woman roughly the same age, storming past the end of the next aisle. Her hair a tangled mess, her eyes wide and wild. She was talking to herself, too, cursing loudly, tugging at the sleeves of her sweatshirt like they were strangling her. Chris leaned in and muttered under his breath, "Yikes." "Meth? Probably, yeah." My stomach tightened. My instincts were screaming, but I brushed it off. We weren't doing anything wrong. We were just buying food. We grabbed a pack of frozen omelets, some snacks, and a case of sparkling water. I paid at the self-checkout while Chris bagged everything. The whole time I could feel eyes on me. That man, the one pacing earlier, was now closer, standing a few feet away, just staring. No blinking, just staring like he was trying to memorize my face. My pulse started to pick up. "Chris, and let's go." We headed for the exit. The guard didn't even look up from his phone. We walked past. Outside, the night air felt thick, like it was holding its breath. I quickened my pace to the car, and Chris did the same without asking why. As I loaded the groceries into the trunk, I heard footsteps, heavy, fast. I looked up and saw him, the same man, storming across the lot toward us. His girlfriend trailed behind him, her face twisted in a grimace like she'd bitten into something sour. "Get in the car now," I hissed, my voice cracked, betraying my panic. Chris slid into the passenger seat as I jumped behind the wheel. I'd barely shut my door when, bang, 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 he slammed his fist against my window so hard the glass rattled. "Give it back," he screamed, his voice raw and ragged. "You stole her wallet. Hand it over before I break this expletive window." My heart nearly exploded out of my chest. "What the hell are you talking about? I don't have your wallet." I cracked the window an inch, just enough to speak. "Check my damn hands. I didn't steal anything." Bull expletive, he roared. His girlfriend started circling the car like a shark, peering into the windows. "You took it off the counter when she wasn't looking. We saw you. Give it back, or you're dead." Chris shouted, "Dude, we didn't take expletive. Back off." The man's eyes darted around like a predator deciding where to strike. Then he snarled, If you don't hand it over, I'm taking your wallet instead. That was it. I rolled the window up and threw the car into reverse. He slammed both hands on the hood, screaming incoherently. I floored it backward, swerving out of the spot. He stumbled back, then bolted toward a dark SUV parked a few rows over. His girlfriend dove into the passenger seat, and a second later their headlights blazed to life. Go, go, go. Chris yelled. I didn't need the encouragement. I tore out of the lot and onto the road, tires squealing. My heart was pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. For half a mile it was silent, just the hum of the engine and my own shaky breathing. Then I saw headlights in the rear view. Bright, coming fast. Oh my God, I whispered, it's them. The SUV flew up behind us like a bat out of hell, swerving between lanes, horn blaring. He flicked his high beams on and off over and over until my vision was seared with white spots. They're trying to ram us. Chris shouted, go to the cops. Now, I took a sharp right, then another. My brain was in overdrive, calculating routes, remembering landmarks, anything to lose them. But every time I thought I'd shaken them, those lights came screaming back into view closer than before. He's going to kill us, I muttered, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles etched. My voice broke on the last word. Chris tried to sound calm, but I heard the terror in his tone. You're doing great. Just keep going. I sped through intersections, ignoring red lights, praying no other cars were around. My breath came in shallow gasps. I could hear him screaming from his SUV, even over the engine roar. It was like his voice was inside my head now. Give it back or die. Give it back or die. Finally, I saw it. The glowing blue sign of the police station, Salvation. I swerved into the lot so fast the tires screeched. The SUV followed, pulling in right behind us. My stomach dropped. He wasn't afraid of the cops. That realization made my blood run cold. I slammed the gear into park, locked the doors, and grabbed my phone with shaking hands. I dialed 911 even as the man jumped out of his SUV and sprinted toward us, pounding on the window again. Open the door, you expletive. I know you have it. Hand it over or I swear to God, I'm on the phone with the cops right now. I screamed, tears streaming down my face. They're coming out. You're done. For a split second, something in his expression shifted. Fear, realization. He glanced at the building, then back at me. His jaw worked like he wanted to say something, but instead he spun on his heel, dove back into the SUV, and tore out of the lot with his girlfriend screaming from the passenger side. I sat there shaking, sobbing, clutching the phone like a lifeline. Chris reached over and grabbed my hand. You're okay. We're okay. The cops came out a minute later, calm as could be, like this was just another boring night. They took our statements, descriptions, everything, but without a plate number, there wasn't much they could do. One officer even asked if I'd been drinking like I was the problem. That stung. By the time we left, it was after 3:30 a.m. I drove aimlessly for another half hour, looping through random streets to make sure no one was following us. When we finally got home, the sun was starting to rise. The omelets were cold. I didn't care. I couldn't eat. My hands were still trembling when I unlocked our door. To this day, I don't know if that couple was running some kind of scam or if drugs had fried their brains so badly they truly believed I stole something. All I know is this. I've never gone back to Costco after midnight, and I never ever will. I never thought Costco, of all places, would become the setting for one of the scariest nights of my life. Back then, I was 24, living in a mid-sized college town, working as a shift lead at a small electronics repair shop. It wasn't my dream job, but it paid enough for rent and groceries. My schedule was brutal, though. Long hours, irregular breaks, and constant customer chaos. By the time Friday rolled around, I was Exhausted, but determined to stock up on essentials for the week. Costco was my go-to. Affordable, convenient, and honestly, I loved the calm of walking through big aisles after a stressful day. That night was cold, late winter in Indiana, so the air had that sharp, almost metallic bite to it. Sky was pitch black by 7:00 p.m., and the parking lot lights cast those weird yellow halos over rows of cars. I pulled in around 8:30 p.m. The store closed at 9:30, so I had an hour to get what I needed. I grabbed a cart and started the usual route. Produce, dairy, frozen foods. Nothing unusual, at least at first. While I was tossing a family pack of chicken into my cart, I noticed him. An older guy, late 50s, maybe early 60s, standing near the end of the aisle. He wasn't shopping. No cart, no basket, nothing in his hands, just standing there watching me. When I glanced up, he gave me this polite smile. Too polite, like something was off, but I brushed it off. People look around in stores all the time, right? I moved on. A few aisles later, I was picking out bottled water when I caught sight of him again. This time, he wasn't across the aisle. He was on the same side, about 15 ft away, pretending to look at something on the shelf. I swear he wasn't even reading labels. His head was tilted just enough that his eyes were on me. I felt a twinge of unease in my stomach. Still, I told myself not to overreact. It's a public place, plenty of cameras, plenty of people. I pushed forward, trying to shake it off, but then he spoke. Cold night, huh? His voice was rough, growly, like he hadn't spoken in a while. Yeah, pretty cold. I replied with a polite smile and kept moving. He didn't follow immediately. That almost made it worse, like he was pacing himself. When I reached the snack aisle, there he was again, standing halfway down, leaning on a shelf like he'd been waiting. You local? He asked, his tone casual, but his eyes were too intense. Yeah, I said, forcing a laugh. Why? He shrugged, just wondering. You look familiar. You work around here. I lied. No, just visiting. The way he smiled at that made my skin crawl. It wasn't friendly. It was like he knew I was lying and enjoyed it. I ditched the snack aisle and headed toward the checkout. I had enough groceries to last me a week, and I didn't want to stick around any longer. As I walked, I glanced over my shoulder. He was following me, not close, about 3 aisles back, but every time I turned, I caught that same blue jacket and gray beanie. I checked out as fast as I could, bagging my stuff with shaky hands. The cashier, a kid who couldn't have been more than 19, noticed. You okay? He asked. Yeah, just tired. I lied again, plastering on a smile. I headed for the exit, scanning the parking lot through the glass doors. It wasn't too crowded. My car was parked a little far, 3rd row from the end, because the closer spots had been full when I arrived. As soon as I stepped outside, the cold wind hit me like a slap. My breath puffed out in clouds as I pushed the cart toward my car, forcing myself not to look back. Halfway there, I heard boots crunching on gravel behind me. I risked a glance over my shoulder. It was him, same jacket, same beanie, hands in his pockets. Walking faster now, my chest tightened. My keys were in my coat pocket, but my gloves made it clumsy to grab them. I ditched the cart by my car and fumbled for the keys, heart hammering. Hey. His voice came closer than I expected. I whipped around. He was about 10 ft away, still walking casually. Like we were old friends. You dropped something, he said, holding out. Nothing. His hand was empty. No, I didn't. I snapped, yanking the car door open. Don't be like that, he said softly, almost like he was disappointed. I slammed the door shut and hit the lock just as he reached my bumper. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely start the engine. That's when he smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that didn't touch his eyes. He stepped to the side and tapped his knuckles on my window. "Pretty girl like you shouldn't walk alone at night," he murmured through the glass. I floored it. The tires squealed as I shot out of the parking lot, nearly clipping a shopping cart someone had left in the middle of the lane. In the rearview mirror, I saw him standing there, watching my car disappear, his hand still raised like he'd been about to knock again. I didn't drive straight home. I circled through side streets for nearly 20 minutes, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. When I finally pulled into my apartment complex, I parked 2 buildings away from mine just in case. I barely slept that night. The next day, my phone buzzed around noon. It was a coworker from my shop. "Hey," she said, "some old guy's been coming by all morning asking for you. Says he knows you from Costco." My stomach dropped. "What did you tell him?" I whispered. "Nothing, just that you weren't here. He's weird, though. Came in like 3 times already." I left work early that day, paranoid the entire time that he was watching me. For the next week, I changed my routine. Different parking spots, different routes, even asked friends to walk me out at night. Eventually, my coworkers told me the guy stopped coming around, but I never saw him again. Not at Costco, not on the street. And that scares me even more because if he's still out there still thinking about me, I wouldn't know. I was 7 years old when I learned that places filled with people aren't always safe. That day started like any other. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, warm outside, the kind of day when the sunlight feels almost lazy, stretching across every corner of the street. Mom picked me up from school, her hair tied back in a loose ponytail, her sunglasses sitting crooked on top of her head. She smiled at me as I climbed into the car, but her voice carried that tiredness parents get after a long morning. "Cadden," she said, glancing at me in the rearview mirror, "we need to make a quick stop at Costco before heading home. You okay with that?" I nodded instantly, my 7-year-old self practically buzzing. Costco was like another planet to me. Bright, endless aisles, shelves stacked to the ceiling with things bigger than me. The best part, free samples. For a kid, it was heaven. The parking lot was packed when we pulled in. Rows upon rows of shiny cars reflecting the sun like mirrors. Mom parked farther away than usual, muttering about how everyone decided to shop today of all days. I jumped out, clutching her hand tightly as we walked toward the sliding glass doors. "Don't let go, okay?" she reminded me for the 100th time. "This place is huge." "I won't," I promised, though my excitement was bubbling. The blast of cool air hit us as the doors whooshed open, and I inhaled deeply. It smelled like polish and baked bread. Carts clanged against each other. Somewhere far off, I heard a kid crying. Mom grabbed a cart, and we started our journey through the maze of aisles. I stared in awe at everything. The towers of cereal boxes, shiny electronics, the freezers humming like giant beasts. Every few minutes I tugged on her sleeve. "Can we go see the books or the toys?" "2 seconds, baby," she said, scanning shelves. "I just need to grab some new soup flavors for dinner." We turned into the instant food aisle. That's when it happened. Mom let go of my hand for the first time that trip. Just for a second, she needed to reach across to grab a pack of soup. And in that second, I noticed him. A man. He stood at the far end of the aisle at first, pretending to look at something on the shelves. He had a windbreaker zipped up to his neck, even though it was summer. His beard was scruffy, patchy, like it hadn't seen a razor in weeks. He started walking toward me, slow at first, then a little quicker. He bent slightly so his face was closer to mine, and whispered in a low voice that didn't match the fake smile on his lips. "Hey, buddy, want to check out the toys with me?" My heart thumped hard enough to hurt. I was 7, but I wasn't stupid. Mom had drilled it into me. Don't talk to strangers, don't go anywhere with them. I shook my head fast and glanced back at her. She was still comparing soup packets. Come on, he whispered again, his eyes darting toward the end of the aisle. Just for a second, I'll show you something cool. No, I said, barely above a whisper. Then I yelled, Mom. The sound startled him. He straightened quickly, shoved his hands into his pockets, and walked away without another word, disappearing into the next aisle. I clung to Mom's hand the second she turned back. I didn't tell her. Not then. She was focused, and I didn't want to get in trouble for wandering. We moved on. She even bought me a toy later as a treat. By the time we finished shopping, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Almost, we were heading toward the checkout when I tugged on Mom's sleeve. Mom, I got to use the bathroom. She sighed but smiled. Okay, but be quick. I'll be right here in line. She pointed down the long corridor toward the restrooms at the back. I nodded and ran. The hallway was quieter than the main store, the sounds of carts and chatter fading behind me. My sneakers squeaked against the polished floor. I was almost at the restroom door when a rough hand clamped over my mouth and yanked me backward. It was him, the man from the aisle. His grip on my wrist was like iron. His other hand pressed over my mouth so hard I could taste the salt and dirt on his skin. Panic exploded inside me. I kicked and twisted, but he dragged me into the shadow of the hallway away from the bathroom entrance. Stay quiet, he hissed, his breath sour and hot against my ear. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. It didn't sound okay at all. I started crying, my muffled screams dying against his palm. His eyes, God, I still remember those eyes, darted everywhere, wild and restless like he was checking for witnesses, and then instinct took over. I bit him hard. My teeth sank into the fleshy part of his hand until I tasted something metallic. Blood! He howled and jerked his hand away. That was my chance. I sucked in the biggest breath my lungs could hold and screamed, Mom. The sound tore through the quiet corridor. It echoed so loud it startled even me. 2 employees stocking shelves nearby heard and came running. The man shoved me to the ground and bolted down the hallway, disappearing into the sea of shoppers. I lay there sobbing until the employees knelt beside me, asking if I was hurt. One stayed while the other called security. My mom arrived seconds later, panic etched all over her face. She dropped everything from the cart and pulled me into her arms, crying harder than I'd ever seen before. Security locked the exits, checked cameras, called the police. They found him on the footage wandering for over an hour, never buying anything, lurking near the toys and kids' books, glancing at the cameras like he hated being watched. But he slipped out in the chaos before they could catch him. He was never found. That was over 20 years ago. I'm in my 30s now, but every time I walk into a big store, especially when I see those long, empty hallways leading to the restrooms, my chest tightens. I remember the feel of his hand, the smell of his skin, the sound of his whisper. And when I take my niece shopping, I never ever let go of her hand because I know what almost happened when I was 7. And I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't screamed. I never imagined a job at Costco would leave me with memories that still make my stomach twist. When I first signed up for the overnight shift, it felt like a sweet deal. Steady pay, no dealing with rude customers, and a lot of independence. My days were free, and the nights were spent in the calm emptiness of a giant warehouse stacked with endless rows of bulk goods. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. The first few weeks went smoothly. Nights were quiet, almost comforting. The hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, the rhythmic beeping of forklifts, the occasional sound of plastic wrap being torn from pallets, those became the soundtrack to my life. We'd clock in at 10 p.m., grab our scanners and start working aisle by aisle until dawn. I liked the peace. I liked that we could joke around on the walkie-talkies or listen to music through one earbud while stacking pallets. For a while, it almost felt relaxing, but then there was that night. The night that made me realize the scariest things aren't ghosts or monsters. They're people. It was a Tuesday in early November, cold enough outside that you could feel it in the air, even inside the building. I remember that detail because I was assigned to the far end near Dock 3. And that part of the warehouse always felt a few degrees colder than the rest. It's where the loading bays and emergency exits are. And when you're working alone back there, it feels like a completely different world from the rest of the building. Most of the team was up front working on aisles 5 through 9. My job was to check the new shipment stacked near the back wall and restock a few items in bulk snacks and cleaning supplies. Nothing complicated. I had one earbud in low volume, just enough to keep me company without missing anyone calling my name. As I scanned boxes and checked receipts, I noticed something strange. The corridor that led to the emergency door was dark. Normally, that wasn't unusual. The motion lights didn't always kick on unless someone walked down there. But this time, the door wasn't fully shut. It was cracked open. Not much, just an inch or two, enough for the yellowish glow of the parking lot lights to bleed through. Now, these doors were never supposed to be open. They were alarmed. We'd even gotten chewed out a week earlier because someone propped one open for a smoke break. Security had made it clear, keep the doors shut. So I figured maybe one of the guys went out for a quick smoke and didn't pull it tight. Annoying, but not unheard of. I started walking toward it, ready to close it and maybe radio security. My boots echoed against the concrete, and as I got closer, the cold draft from the open door brushed against my face. That's when I noticed something that froze me mid-step. There was someone standing at the far end of the corridor. At first, I thought it was just a shadow, a trick of the dim light. But no, it was a man. I couldn't make out his features, but I saw the outline clearly. Messy hair, long arms, standing completely still, like he'd been carved from stone. I called out, my voice shaking a little, "Hey, who's back there?" No response. He didn't flinch, didn't move an inch. I swallowed hard and tried again louder this time. "Yo, employees only, man. You can't be back here." Still nothing. He just stood there watching me. Something about the way he stood, so still, so unnatural, sent chills racing up my spine. My brain scrambled for an explanation. Maybe a homeless guy looking for shelter. Maybe a drunk delivery driver. But if that was the case, why wasn't he saying anything? I slowly reached for my radio. The second my hand touched it, the man bolted. No words, no sound, just turned and sprinted down the side corridor and disappeared into the shadows. My heart nearly exploded in my chest. I grabbed a flashlight from the shelf and followed, but when I reached the intersection of aisles, he was gone. Nothing but silence and rows of towering shelves. I wanted to believe he ran out the emergency door, but something told me he hadn't. Something told me he was still inside. I called security. They swept the back area and found nothing. No doors open, no sign of forced entry. They shrugged it off, told me to keep working. So I did, or at least I tried. 15 minutes later, I was in the middle of restocking paper towels when I felt something wet on the back of my neck. At first, I thought it was water, but Costco ceilings are sealed tight. No leaks ever. I reached back and wiped my neck. My fingers came away slick. Before I could process it, I heard the faintest sound above me, a creak, a shuffle. I tilted my head back, and that's when I saw him. The man perched on top of the towering shelf, crouched like some animal, his face partially hidden by shadows. His eyes locked on mine, wide, unblinking, and the wetness on my neck. It wasn't water. It was his drool. I froze. My throat went dry. For a second, neither of us moved. Then I whispered, barely audible, "What the hell?" The shelf trembled as he shifted. Then, without warning, he lunged down. I screamed. My radio clattered to the floor as I bolted down the aisle. I heard the crash of boxes behind me, the slam of heavy boots on concrete. Security, back dock now. I shouted into the mic, praying someone heard me. I didn't look back until I reached the main aisle where bright light spilled across polished concrete. My lungs burned. My hands shook as I grabbed a steel rod we used for moving pallets. By the time security arrived, the man was gone. They checked every exit, every camera, nothing. No alarms triggered, no doors opened, like he'd vanished into thin air. The next afternoon, my manager called me in early, said security wanted to show me something. I followed him to the back office where the camera feeds are stored. The security manager didn't say a word, just hit play. On the screen, I saw myself working in the aisle near Dock 3. Everything looked normal, but in the background, barely visible, unless you were looking for it, was the emergency door and someone was standing there. The man, he had been there for over an hour, barely moving, just watching. Occasionally, he would lean forward and gently push the door open inch by inch, then pull it back like he was testing something. Whole time his face was hidden, but his posture, slouched, head tilted, was wrong, almost inhuman. Then came the worst part. As I worked, he crawled up the shelving like a spider. No hesitation, no struggle, like he'd done it before. He waited up there for 20 whole minutes, watching me, drooling on me, the footage cut off when I ran screaming down the aisle. Security froze the frame on his face. What little we could see looked wrong, his eyes too wide, mouth slightly open like he was grinning. Police think it's some transient who slipped in during the day, the manager said, his voice uneasy. But the thing is, we can't figure out how he left. No cameras caught him leaving, none. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My stomach felt like a pit of ice. I transferred to another store 2 weeks later. To this day, I still work nights, but never in a building that big, that empty, that silent. And every time I pass an emergency door, I check twice, because sometimes the thing you fear most isn't outside, it's already in. I always thought big box stores like Costco were safe. Bright lights, security cameras, the constant hum of carts rolling on polished floors. It never seemed like the kind of place where something bad could happen. But that night, I learned that safety is an illusion, and sometimes the scariest things happen in the places we feel most comfortable. It started on a cold Friday evening in late November. I'd just gotten off work, 10 hours staring at spreadsheets in a cubicle that smelled like burnt coffee and cheap carpet cleaner. My brain was fried, but my fridge was empty. I figured I'd make a quick Costco run for groceries before heading home. The sky was already dark when I pulled into the parking lot. Rows of cars glistened with dew under the yellow lights, and people were filing out with carts piled high with everything from giant packs of toilet paper to rotisserie chickens. I parked near the far end because, of course, the lot was packed. As I killed the engine, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "Mom, don't forget to grab that big pack of bottled water. You know, storms are coming." I smiled. She always worried about things like that. Inside, the store was warm and smelled faintly of baked bread and coffee from the food court. The usual chaos was in full swing. Families arguing over what snacks to buy, couples debating TV, kids begging for free samples. I grabbed a cart, trying to ignore the holiday madness, and started my list. Water, coffee, chicken, frozen veggies. Halfway through the store, I noticed him. At first, he didn't seem out of place. Just a tall guy in a gray hoodie pushing an empty cart slowly down the aisle, but what caught my attention was the way he moved. Too slow, like he wasn't shopping at all. His cart was empty. His hood was up, and his head was tilted slightly down like he didn't want anyone to see his face. I brushed it off. People shop weirdly all the time, right? Still, a chill crawled up my spine when I turned down the next aisle and saw him there, too. I told myself it was nothing. Costco was huge. People cross paths. No big deal. But every time I moved to a different section, produce, dairy, frozen foods, he showed up. Not right next to me, but close enough that I noticed. Always with that empty cart, always silent. After about 40 minutes, I had everything I needed. I checked out, loaded my stuff into the back of my SUV, and was about to return my cart when I saw him again, standing a few rows away, pretending to look at his phone, still wearing that hood, still empty-handed. My stomach tightened. Maybe I was being paranoid, but something felt wrong. I shoved my cart into the return area and climbed into my car, locking the doors immediately. When I looked up, he was gone. I exhaled hard, trying to convince myself I'd imagined the whole thing. Just such random guy, no big deal. I started the car, pulled out of my space, and headed toward the exit. The entire time, my eyes flicked to the rear-view mirror, and then I saw headlights pull out 2 rows behind me, a gray sedan. My pulse spiked. Could it be him? I couldn't tell. I took the long way out of the parking lot, looping around instead of heading straight for the exit. The gray car followed. The next 15 minutes were hell. Every turn I took, the gray car took too. I even switched lanes randomly, and so did he. I told myself to stay calm, that maybe he just lived in the same direction. But when I passed my own street to test the theory and he still didn't turn, panic sank its claws into me. That's when I remembered the big well-lit gas station a few miles ahead. I pulled in fast, parked near the entrance, and ran inside. The cashier gave me a weird look as I pretended to browse candy. Through the window, I saw the gray car cruise slowly past the station, then disappear into the night. I waited 10 minutes before heading home. When I finally got there, my hands were still shaking as I locked every door and window. I didn't sleep much that night. Life went on. Work, home, repeat. The fear faded, just a creepy experience I'd laugh about later until the following Friday. I'd put it off all week, but I needed more groceries. I debated going to a different store, but Costco had the best deals, and I convinced myself the guy wouldn't be there again. I was wrong. The moment I walked in, I saw him. Same gray hoodie, same empty cart, standing near the entrance like he'd been waiting. My throat went dry. I tried to act normal, grabbing a cart and forcing myself down the nearest aisle. My mind was racing. Was this a coincidence, or had he been coming here every night? Hoping to find me again, as I turned a corner, I felt eyes on me. When I looked back, there he was, slowly following, silent as a shadow. I picked up my pace, heart pounding. Maybe I should tell an employee, but what would I say? A guy is looking at me. They'd think I was crazy. I made it halfway through my list when I realized something terrifying. The crowd was thinning. Closing time was coming up. People were leaving. The bright, busy store was growing quiet, aisles emptying one by one, and he was still there. Every time I glanced back, he was closer. That's when I made a mistake. I headed for the back of the store, the giant freezer section, thinking I could lose him there. The moment I turned down that icy aisle, I knew I'd screwed up. It was completely empty. The hum of the freezers was deafening. I gripped my cart like a lifeline and moved fast, grabbing random things I didn't even need. My breath fogged in the cold air. Then I heard it. Footsteps, slow, steady, behind me. I spun around. He was there, just a few feet away now. Hood still up, face shadowed. "Can I help you?" My voice cracked like brittle glass. He didn't answer, just stood there breathing. My legs wanted to run, but my body felt like concrete. Then he said something so quiet I almost didn't catch it. "You shouldn't have left that night." My heart stopped. "What?" I whispered. He smiled just barely and reached into his hoodie. Instinct took over. I shoved my cart hard into him and bolted. My sneakers squealed on the polished floor as I sprinted toward the front. My lungs burned, my heart slammed against my ribs. Behind me, I heard him stumble, then rapid slap of his shoes as he gave chase. "Help!" I screamed, my voice echoing off the high ceilings. "Help me!" But the store was almost empty. The few employees I saw were far away, staring in shock as I tore past. I crashed through the self-checkout area and into the vestibule. My hands fumbled with my keys as I sprinted for the door. And then a hand clamped down on my shoulder. I whipped around, ready to fight. It was a security guard, a young guy with wide, startled eyes. "What's going on?" he asked. I spun toward the doors. The man in the gray hoodie was gone. The cops came. I gave a statement, trembling so hard I could barely hold the pen. They searched the store, the parking lot, everywhere, nothing, no sign of him. One of the officers told me something that still makes my blood run cold. "Security, check the cameras. There's no one following you, just you running." I stared at him numb. "That's not possible." He was right there. The cop gave me a look I'll never forget, a mix of pity and doubt. I went home that night feeling like I was losing my mind, but I know what I saw, and sometimes when I'm in a store alone, I still feel it. The weight of eyes in the aisles, the sound of slow footsteps behind me, waiting, watching, because some shadows don't stay in the dark. They follow you home. I never thought a quick stop for pizza would turn into one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. It was the summer of 2018, a weird transitional time in my life. I had just graduated high school along with my two closest friends, Marcus and Tyler. The three of us had made a pact to stay active that summer. So, every morning we hit the gym together. It became a routine. Wake up, meet at the gym, blast some music, and push each other to lift heavier or run farther. Afterward, we'd usually grab a smoothie or hit up a diner for pancakes. But that day, Marcus had a different idea. "Yo, we should go to that wholesale place, Costco, whatever it's called," he said as we were leaving the gym, sweat still dripping down our backs. "You mean Costco?" Tyler asked, chuckling as he tossed his towel into his gym bag. "Yeah, dude, their pizza is fire. I'm telling you, like the best you'll ever have," Marcus said, witty and serious, like he just discovered a holy grail of cheap food. I laughed. "Bro, it's warehouse pizza. How good can it be, and don't you need a membership for that?" "That's the beauty of it," Marcus said, smirking. "I've gone like 5 times and no one's ever stopped me. You just walk in behind people." "Easy." I exchanged a look with Tyler. He shrugged. We had nothing better to do and we were all starving. "Fine," I said, "but if we get kicked out, we're blaming you." Marcus grinned like a kid getting away with something. "Trust me, you'll thank me later." The drive there was normal. The sun was beating down hard and the AC in Marcus' old Honda barely worked. We had the windows rolled down, music blasting, talking about college plans and stupid inside jokes from school. Everything felt light, easy, like we were untouchable. The Costco, whatever, was packed when we pulled in. Families were loading up giant carts with bulk items, and I felt a little out of place walking in with just a wallet and gym bag. "You sure about this?" I asked as we approached the entrance. The automatic door slid open, that blast of cool air hitting us like heaven after the sticky heat outside. "Relax," Marcus said, "just stick close. Look like you know what you're doing." We slipped in behind a family with 2 kids. My heart was pounding harder than it had on the treadmill earlier, but no one stopped us. See, Marcus whispered, grinning. Easy. The food court was right up ahead. I could smell pizza and hot dogs and hear the low hum of conversations mixed with the beeping of cash registers. Tyler laughed. All right, Marcus, I'll admit it. This was a good idea. We didn't make it to the line. Out of nowhere, a man in a red Costco polo appeared in front of us. He looked maybe late 20s, clean shave and friendly smile. Hey guys, membership cards, please. He asked casually like it was no big deal. Marcus froze for half a second, then gave this awkward laugh. Yeah, about that. We were just hoping to grab a pizza. We don't have memberships. The guy tilted his head, but didn't lose that friendly smile. Okay. Normally, we can't let people buy food without one, but you know what? I can set you up with a guest pass for the day. Super easy. Just follow me. Tyler and I exchanged a quick glance. Something about his tone was reassuring. Like, sure, why not? He worked here, right? Sounds good, Marcus said, eager as ever. The guy led us away from the food court, past aisles stacked high with bulk snacks and electronics. At first, I thought we were heading to some customer service desk, but then he opened a gray door on the sidewall and gestured for us to follow. Just through here, he said with that same smile. The hallway behind the door was narrow, lit by buzzing fluorescent lights. We walked down it in silence, the sound of our sneakers echoing on the concrete floor. My stomach started to twist. This didn't feel like the place you'd go for a guest pass. Where are we going? I asked, trying to sound casual. Almost there, he said without looking back. At the end of the hall, he opened another door into a pitch-black room. The smell hit me first. Sweaty, stale air, like a locker room that hadn't been cleaned in weeks. Go ahead in, I'll turn the lights on, he said. Marcus, ever the fearless idiot, stepped inside first. Tyler followed. I hesitated, but the guy was standing there waiting, so I went in too. The lights flicked on. My blood ran cold. There were 5 men inside, big guys, all wearing black hoodies and ski masks, none of them in Costco uniforms. They weren't holding anything, but the way they stood, the way they all turned to look at us felt wrong. Predatory, what the hell, Marcus started, but the man who brought us here stepped inside and shut the door. He spread his arms wide, blocking the exit. Do what they say, he said calmly. For a split second, no one moved. My mind was screaming, this isn't real. This isn't happening. Then Marcus exploded into motion. He charged the guy at the door, slamming his shoulder into him so hard the man stumbled backward. Run, Marcus yelled. I didn't think. I bolted. Tyler was right behind me. I heard footsteps pounding behind us, heavy breathing, someone shouting, grab them. We tore down the hallway, rounded the corner, and burst back through the gray door into the bright, crowded store. Shoppers turned to look as we sprinted past, but I didn't care. We didn't stop until we were outside in the blinding sunlight, lungs burning, hearts slamming against our ribs. We didn't look back. We just ran to Marcus' car, dove in, and peeled out of the parking lot like our lives depended on it. When we finally stopped at a gas station, 10 minutes away, none of us spoke for a long time. Marcus gripped the steering wheel like he wanted to break it. Tyler's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his water bottle. What the hell was that? I finally said, my voice cracking. No one had an answer. We never reported it, never told anyone. And to this day, I have no idea what those men wanted or what would have happened if Marcus hadn't acted. But every time someone talks about how good Costco pizza is, I feel my stomach turn because I know what's behind those doors. I've always considered myself careful, not paranoid, just aware. I grew up in a small, safe town where the worst crime you'd hear about was a stolen bike. That kind of environment makes you feel untouchable, like bad things only happen in news headlines. Never in your parking lot, never in your life. That illusion shattered for me one Friday evening last month. It started like any other exhausting workday. My office job wasn't glamorous, just spreadsheets, meetings, and answering emails that sounded urgent but never really were. Deadlines piled up until I left an hour later than usual. The fluorescent lights in my building buzzed as the sun outside began to dip toward the horizon. I should have gone straight home. I wanted to, but my fridge was empty, completely barren, except for half a bottle of ketchup and some expired almond milk. I didn't have the energy for takeout again, so I figured one quick stop at Costco, in and out, then home. Costco was on the route back, so it made sense, or at least that's what I told myself. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, the sky was washed in dusky pink and bruised purple. Clouds stretched like cotton across the fading light. Most people were heading home. Families pushed carts stacked high, kids dragging their feet, tired parents coring them toward minivans. I parked far back, way farther than I liked, because every spot near the entrance was packed. Rows and rows of cars shimmered in the soft glow of distant lampposts. The farther spots were dim with long shadows pooling between vehicles like black water. I grabbed a cart and headed inside. The blast of fluorescent light hit my eyes like a camera flash. The familiar smell of baked goods and rotisserie chicken hung in the air. Costco always had this low hum. Carts clanking, people chatting, registers beeping. It was oddly comforting. My list was short. Bread, milk, eggs, some frozen meals, and shampoo. Always shampoo. My hair is thick, and I hate running out. As I wandered through the aisles, I let myself relax. Everything felt normal again. The mundane rhythm of shopping, grabbing boxes, comparing prices, dodging other carts, soothing in its own way. I even stopped for a sample, something sweet. Cheesecake, maybe. The lady handing them out smiled and told me, almost closing time, hun. I glanced at my phone. 7:38 p.m., closing at 8:00, perfect timing. By 7:55, I was in line. Just a handful of customers remained, mostly older couples and a tired-looking mom with a toddler melting down in her cart. My turn came quick. I paid, smiled politely at the cashier, and pushed my heavy cart toward the doors. The second I stepped outside, the shift in atmosphere hit me like a punch. The sun was gone completely. The lot was bathed in that eerie blue-gray tint that settles right before true darkness. The few lamp-posts cast weak halos on the pavement, leaving wide stretches in shadow. Most of the cars were gone now. The air smelled colder, sharper. I pushed my cart toward my car, wheels squeaking faintly against the asphalt. My Honda sat in one of the farthest rows near a patch where the light didn't quite reach. I muttered under my breath, should have parked closer. When I reached the car, my breath puffed in small clouds. I popped the trunk and started loading bags as fast as I could. Bread, milk, eggs, frozen dinners stacked like bricks. My shampoo bottle clinked against a jar of pasta sauce. That's when I heard it breathing. Not mine. Behind me, a voice followed, soft, but close enough to feel the vibration in my spine. Hey, excuse me. Every nerve in my body went tight. Slowly I turned. He stood less than 5 feet away, mid-40s maybe. Hair slicked back and greasy strands that stuck to his forehead. His face looked pale, sallow, with deep lines carved around his mouth. He wore a stained gray t-shirt and jeans that had seen better days. His eyes, dark, sunken, darting, were locked on me in a way that made my stomach twist. "Do you have jumper cables?" For half a second, relief flickered. Maybe he's just stuck. Maybe this isn't, but something felt wrong. So wrong, it wasn't just his appearance. It was the way he stood, too close, angled like he was ready to block me if I moved. His tone wasn't desperate, like someone stranded. It was casual, too casual. I forced a polite smile. "No, sorry, don't have any." He nodded slowly like he didn't believe me. "You sure?" He stepped closer. "You look like the type who keeps things organized. Maybe check your car." That sentence hit like a brick. "You look like the type who keeps things organized." Who says that to a stranger? I shook my head quickly. "Pretty sure." "Sorry." I turned back, heart thudding against my ribs, and kept loading my trunk. Hands trembling now, my breath came faster, loud in my own ears. "Just a few more bags, then get in the car, lock the doors, leave." But then I felt him move closer. The sour, stale stench of sweat and old cigarettes hit my nose. His voice came again, softer. "What's that smell?" I froze, my throat closed up. "What, your shampoo?" His breath brushed the back of my head as he inhaled deeply, sniffed my hair like a dog. Every hair on my body stood on end. My mind screamed, "Move," but my body was stoned. Then his voice, low, almost playful, "Smells amazing. You get it here at Costco. Maybe I'll try it sometime." I spun around so fast the cart rattled, my voice cracking. "What the hell are you doing?" He grinned wide, yellow teeth gleaming under the dim light. His eyes glittered with something far darker than curiosity. "Didn't want to pry." He said slowly, tilting his head, "But damn, smells nice." My stomach churned. I couldn't speak. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped my keys. And then he asked the question that made my blood run cold. "They sell underwear in there. How about you show me the kind you're wearing right now? My wife's about your size." My vision blurred at the edges. My hands went numb. All I could think was, he's going to hurt me right here, right now. I slammed the trunk shut, jumped into the driver's seat, and hit the lock button so hard it clicked twice. My breath came in ragged gasps as I jammed the key into the ignition. Through the windshield, I saw him still standing there, grinning like this was fun. Then he walked away, not toward the store, not out of the lot. He slid into a dark blue Honda parked 2 rows back. And when I pulled out, heart pounding, hands slippery on the wheel, he pulled out too. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The inside of my car felt suffocating, like the air had turned thick and heavy. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles etched. The blue Honda's headlights lit up in my rear-view mirror the moment I pulled onto the main aisle of the parking lot. My stomach dropped. He's following me, not maybe, not coincidence. I knew it in my bones. I made a slow turn toward the exit, trying to look calm, even though panic was clawing up my throat. The lot was almost empty now. No witnesses, no safety in numbers, just me and him. The exit spilled onto the main road. I could go right toward home or left toward the highway. My hands trembled on the wheel. If I went home, he'd know where I lived. That thought alone was enough to make bile rise in my throat. I turned left. His headlights followed, sliding into the lane behind me. God, no, 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 no. I whispered to myself. My breath came in short bursts, fogging up the windshield. I forced myself to think, don't panic, just lose him, take turns, make it hard for him to follow. I tried exactly that. I took a sharp right, then another left. Residential streets, houses with warm windows glowing in the darkness. For a moment, I thought maybe he'd drop off. But every time I glanced in the rear-view mirror, those same headlights hovered. Not tailgating, not close enough to cause suspicion, just lingering like a predator keeping pace with wounded prey. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. I dialed 911 with trembling fingers, but the signal dropped. Dead zone, of course. That's when the worst thought hit me. He's enjoying this. Every turn I took, he mirrored. When I sped up, he sped up. When I slowed down, so did he. It was deliberate, a sick game. Minutes dragged like hours. My brain screamed, "Where can I go?" And then I remembered the police station, 2 miles away near downtown. I floored it. Tires screeched as I shot through an intersection, ignoring the red light. Horns blared. I didn't care. The Honda surged forward, too, weaving through traffic like water around rocks. He was closing the gap now. My pulse thundered. I swerved onto a main road, street lights flashing overhead like strobe lights. The speedometer climbed 45, 50, 60. My hands shook so bad the wheel jittered under my grip. Then a shape. A car pulling out ahead. I slammed the brakes, my seat belt locked across my chest. Behind me, his headlights lunged closer, then swerved at the last second. Tires squealed, rubber burned. Jesus Christ. I choked out, tears stinging my eyes. My body shook from the near miss, and then I saw it. The glowing blue sign, police station 1 mile. I pushed the pedal to the floor. The Honda was right behind me now. So close his lights turned my interior white. My mind raced through every nightmare headline I'd ever read. Woman found dead in parking lot. Body discovered off rural road. Not me, not tonight. The station appeared like a beacon, its floodlights spilling across the lot. I swerved hard into the driveway, tires screaming against the pavement. My car lurched to a stop so violently that my seat belt cut into my collarbone. For a split second, I saw him too, brake lights flashing as he slowed at the entrance. My breath froze. Would he follow? Would he? He didn't. He hesitated, then turned down a side street and vanished into the dark. I sat there in my car, shaking so hard my teeth clattered. My hands were welded to the wheel. It took everything in me to move, to force my body out and stumble through the station doors. The lobby was warm, buzzing with fluorescent lights and the faint smell of stale coffee. A uniformed officer behind the desk looked up. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I couldn't even answer. My voice broke on the first word. He followed me from Costco. They had me sit, brought water. My hands left damp prints on the cup. Words tumbled out in broken pieces. Parking lot man, blue Honda, followed me for miles. Another officer joined in, calm but serious. "You did the right thing coming here. Can you describe him?" I told them everything. His greasy hair, sunken eyes, stained shirt. The way he sniffed my hair, the words he said, the ones that made my stomach flip even now. They took my statement. Then they pulled up security footage from Costco working with the store's loss prevention. 2 days later, the call came. They'd found him. Registered sex offender, fresh out on parole, multiple charges, stalking, harassment, indecent exposure. He wasn't even supposed to be near that area. The officer's words echoed in my head. "You're lucky. It could have ended much worse." But I didn't feel lucky because now every night when I leave work, I check behind me. I scan mirrors, corners, shadows. Every headlight in my rear view sends my heart into my throat. And some nights when the house is quiet and the world outside feels too still, I swear I can smell his breath again. That rancid mix of sweat and cigarettes clinging to the dark like a curse. I haven't gone back to Costco since, and maybe I never will. To every woman reading this, If you're ever alone and something feels wrong, even if it seems small, trust your gut. Don't wait. Don't second guess. Your instincts might save your life. I never imagined a simple grocery trip could become the most terrifying experience of my life. Back then, Costco runs were part of my weekly routine. As a mother of 3 young kids, ages 9, 7, and 4, I practically lived in that store. Between snacks for school, endless cartons of milk, and enough toilet paper to last an apocalypse, Costco was my go-to. My husband worked late most nights, so I often shopped alone after putting the kids to bed. I thought it was convenient. Quiet aisles, no kids tugging at my sleeves, no rush. But that quiet would turn out to be the most dangerous part of all. It was a Wednesday evening in early October. The air had a bite of cold to it, and the parking lot was eerily still. The sun had already dipped below the horizon by the time I pulled into the near-empty lot. My silver minivan was one of maybe 10 cars scattered across the massive space. I remember feeling grateful. It meant no lines, no chaos, just in and out. I parked under one of the flickering lampposts, grabbed my reusable bags from the trunk, and headed inside. The sliding doors opened with their usual whoosh, releasing that familiar smell of rotisserie, chicken, and disinfectant. A couple of employees stood near the entrance, chatting quietly. I gave them a polite nod before grabbing a cart. The store was almost silent except for faint music playing over the speakers and the distant hum of refrigeration units. I liked it this way, peaceful. No kids whining for candy, no endless carts blocking aisles, just me and the echo of my own footsteps. As I started down the produce section, I texted my husband, "Do we need eggs, milk?" He didn't respond right away, so I tucked my phone back into my pocket and moved on. I loaded apples, bananas, and a massive bag of carrots into the cart. My list was long, and I had time, or so I thought. I was halfway through the snack aisle when I noticed it, a shadow of movement from the corner of my eye. At first, I thought it was an employee restocking shelves, but when I turned my head, no one was there, just crates stacked high near the end of the aisle. I brushed it off. My imagination had always been a little overactive, especially in quiet spaces. I kept moving. The store felt even emptier now, and my cartwheels echoed against the polished floor. Then, as I reached for a box of granola bars, something caught my attention, a shape. Behind those crates at the far end, a man crouched low, partially hidden. I could only see the top half of his face, and the brim of a baseball cap pulled low over his brow. For a second, I froze. My first thought, maybe he's an employee messing around. People post videos online of hiding in stores overnight for fun. But this guy wasn't laughing or recording. He was completely still, watching me. I gave a tight smile, pretending I didn't see him, and pushed my cart forward, my heart thumping just a little harder than before. 15 minutes passed. I'd moved to the other side of the store near frozen foods. My cart was almost full, and I was eager to check out. That uneasy feeling had faded a bit until I saw him again. He was there. Same man, same cap, same low crouch behind another stack of crates. Only this time there was no mistaking it. His eyes were locked on me, wide, unblinking. My throat went dry. A rush of heat climbed my neck. Okay, this is weird. Really weird. I tried to rationalize maybe he's playing hide and seek with a kid, but there was no laughter, no tiny footsteps, just him watching. I forced myself to keep moving, but every instinct in my body screamed that something was wrong. My pulse hammered in my ears, and my hands felt slick against the cart handle. By the time I finished my list, I was hyper-aware of every sound, every flicker of movement. I scanned every aisle before entering. Still, nothing could prepare me for what happened next. As I turned toward the front of the store, I glanced behind me and my stomach dropped. He was there, no longer hiding, just walking, slow, deliberate, 10 FD back. His hands were empty, his head tilted slightly down, and his eyes never left mine. I froze for half a second. Should I confront him, scream, my voice caught in my throat? Instead, I sped up, my sneakers squeaking on the glossy floor. My heart slammed so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. He didn't speed up. He just kept coming. His expression didn't change. No smile, no anger, just that blank, chilling stare. I was about to